welcome to the AISTS discussion series, continuing tonight with a session on the inclusion to the Olympic program. For this discussion, we've chosen to have three international federations that are at different stages of their lives, let's say. To start with, we've got federations that have existed for different durations. We've got World Rugby that existed under different names but for over a century. We've got International Orienteering Federation, IOEF, that has celebrated actually their 50th birthday a few years ago. And then we've got IFSC, the International Federation for Sport Climbing, that was created over 10 years ago, though it already existed as a unit within the UIAA before that. So we've got different life of life, and also there are different stages of their road to the inclusion with World Rugby that has been included in the program in 2009.
Yeah, on Copenhagen session.
Yes, after being dropped from the program 85 years before, and after multiple attempts, I would say. Then we've got the International Sports Climbing Federation that actually had one unsuccessful attempt, but is now shortlisted to be included in the program for Tokyo, and will get the final decision made in September? August. And finally, we've got International Orienteering Federation that also made an attempt with ski mountaineering to be included in the 2018 Games.
Yeah, we were also one of the 26 that bid for Tokyo for Summer Games.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. And so they actually, I think the federation here that's been recognized the earliest in 77, and that's seeking the inclusion as well to the Olympic program. For this, we've got three representatives that are here. The three of them have spent more than 10 years in their respective federations working at the highest level, either as voluntary position or as part of the staff. All of them also have previously been involved in their country sports system, whether it was Scotland or England or Italy. So I think we are all in good hands for the discussion tonight. As it is really a discussion rather than a panel or presentation, I might just ask every single of you to briefly just maybe say your name, where you're from, or what you do, or which edition, or what you want to share, so that we all know who we're talking to tonight. And we might ask our few followers who they are online. Hello. All right, you want to start, Neil?
Hi, my name is Neil, and I am from class of 2009. I was working with Lillehammer 2016 Games, but I think the reason why I'm here is because I love the sport of tenpin bowling, and it is also a road for inclusion in the Olympics, and it has always been trying to be in, so it's interesting to learn from your experiences.
My name is Katja, I'm from class 2011. I'm now working with FISU, Sports University Association.
Excuses.
He in Lausanne for a week, and I'd like to take part in this discussion.
I'm Carol Peru, I'm from Switzerland. I'm in the current class of the AISTS, and I've played tennis basically all my life, but now I'm kind of shifted sports and very interested in sky running, trail running, so I know they're kind of on that loop as well, so I'm very interested in what's been talked about.
Hi, I'm Joanna from Portugal, and I'm in the current class as well. And I think this is a theme that interests anyone that follows the Olympics, and very keen to do the discussion.
I'm Karen, I'm from Ireland, and I'm in this year's current class as well. I've got a really keen interest in Olympic inclusion because I come from a karate background, and we'll hopefully be in 2020 with sport climbing, and we missed out to rugby, so it's upsetting. But I'd love to hear about the processes everyone's going through and different stages of that inclusion.
My name is Victoria Iverson. I'm Swiss and Swedish. I did the MSA in 2013. I'm a free agent at the moment, but my background is in international relations, and I used to work for the World Economic Forum. And the sport I'm most passionate about is golf, which is scheduled to reappear in Rio very shortly.
Hello, my name is Jose. I'm actually a student of this edition of the MSA. My background before is more linked to football and also a little bit to rugby, so it's also because a little bit of that I'm here today. And particularly because I really enjoy, as I think everyone in this room, the Olympic movement and all the activities and sports connected to it, and so I came here to learn and to also see what's happening.
Yeah, my name is Gianluca De Cristoforo. I'm Italian and I'm taking part in this year's class. I work as a ski coach mainly, and even though the season is over right now. So, I mean, even if I never tried ski orienteering, come from skiing, I like rugby as a sport. And I'm getting closer to climbing since we're working together with Alexis on a project with the Climbing Federation this year, so I'm interested in listening what they have to say.
Like you said, I'm Alexis. I'm from California, and I'm in this class. My background is a little bit legal. My brother is actually a sport climber, conveniently enough, and like you said, also we're working with them, so I think it's kind of fascinating to put the two links together.
I'm Hans-Jørgen Kvåle. I'm a student of this year's MSA class, and I'm also working for the International Orienteering Federation.
Tom Hollowell, I'm the Secretary General of the Orienteering Federation, and it's always good to get new perspectives.
Hi, that's Francesca from the Sport Climbing Federation, so I'm here to listen all of you.
I'm Jérôme Meyer, the sport director for the Sport Climbing Federation, and happy if we can talk about all this.
My name is Michael DiCastro. I graduated in 2014 from the AISTS. Currently I work for the IOC and in the games department, so this topic of course for me it's a different perspective from the game, so very interesting.
And I'm Donata. I work for FAIRI in the sports development department, and I'm currently working within the knowledge management unit that we have, and also for business development of the sports, and get to know new disciplines and understand how we can include them in our work and volleyball family.
And my name is Michael. I worked for 3 years for FIBA, actually trying to get 3-on-3 basketball also as an additional second Olympic discipline on the program, and now since 2 years supporting FOVB, who luckily already has a second discipline but is now trying to reach out to move from Group 2 to Group 1 within the Olympic movement, so this is why discussions like this are very interesting.
So just for the newcomers, so we've got Brian Porteous, who's the IOF president, got Dominic Saunders, who's the World Rugby Head of Communication, and Marcus Glass, who's the president of the IFSC. Thank you very much for taking the time to introduce each of them. Maybe we've got 2 people as well online.
Yeah, we have three people online.
Yes.
I can identify one of them, the other 2 I cannot, but we have Tariq Saadi from 2015. He's from Lebanon. He's working at Lagardère, specifically on Rio 2016 Olympic Games, implementation of broadcasting rights. His interest is specifically in the Olympic movement and how that as a whole will impact their line of work.
Excellent. Thank you, Tarek. And the others are...
The other 2 I don't know who they are, but maybe they'll hopefully drop some comments a little bit later.
All right, so thanks for taking the time also to register your interest at registration and to tell us a bit more what you wanted us to focus on, because it was quite a broad topic. So after looking at your submissions, we've identified 3 recurring themes really. The first one was really the relevance actually of an inclusion to the Olympic program, not only for the IF but for the sport in general. The second topic was the impact this decision of seeking inclusion had on not only the strategy but also the sport in itself. And finally, the third one was on the other way around, the impact that the inclusion of a sport could have on the development of the Olympic program in the future. But if you've got any other themes or questions, obviously, as usual, feel free to interact. Maybe to get started, I might have a question mostly directed initially to Dominic, but also to the others, which is so on the relevance, because that's the first topic that was identified. Rugby has been out of the program for 85 years and has worked pretty well without it. So how was it relevant, and why did it become that relevant in the 90s and before?
Sure, I think first and foremost I should say please bear with me. We're the newbies on the Olympic programme, very much new to the Olympic environment as well. But in terms of rugby's ambition and Olympic ambitions, as you rightly said, we were last on the programme 92 years ago in Paris, and few people would know that the USA are the reigning Olympic champions when it comes to rugby. But in terms, it'd be interesting to see whether they can repeat that in the women's and men's competitions. They're both qualified. But in terms of our strategic aim, we are a large sport in a small number of countries, and our growth model is very much based on one tournament, the Rugby World Cup, the quadrennial showcase tournament that we host. And the revenues from that tournament probably account for around 90 to 95% of our entire revenue stream. So it's very limited in terms of what we could do in terms of investment and growing the sport. We couldn't do that on our own. And for us strategically, with our strategic mission to grow the global rugby family, we knew that Olympic inclusion would have a profound effect in our ambitions to be able to grow the family beyond its traditional heartlands. So essentially that would mean NOC support, recognition, popularity, commercial interest, all of those areas, things that we couldn't do on our own as a sport, just investing in the sport to our own World Championship. So it was, for us, we could see the enormous benefit of being involved in the Olympic programme. It was far beyond just being a part of being the sport's greatest stage. It was actually about being able to grow the game strategically and sustainably across every continent.
Yeah, well, there's a simple answer and there's a more complicated answer about the relevance of the Olympic journey. For me, I need to say this at the start. For me, the journey. Was it something I said? The journey is actually important, even if we don't get to the ultimate destination.
Said that, I agree. I agree on the fact that, of course, there is a financial side of the story, and getting 25,000 euros, well, dollars is quite different from getting a couple of millions. But it's not only that, it's that the recognition that you get when you are an Olympic sport. Just make an example. Everybody now is giving value to the sport because we are close to the Olympics. But until a few months ago, maybe we had meetings with the Minister of Sport of Kenya, and Minister of Sport of Kenya will say, yes, I love climbing, good idea, maybe we can make a climbing wall in our gardens and this and that. And then when we were talking with the National Olympic Committee president or secretary, okay, go to the functionary and say, but we are not Olympic. So nothing can happen. And then it was stopped. So it's not only the money that we will receive, basically, well, at the moment we are not sure that we will receive a penny, but from this journey, I mean, at least in Tokyo, but it's also the authority that you receive when you can put the 5 rings at full time, so that you can speak to the National Olympic Committees and the benefit for the national organization, which, let's not forget, are the basis of our international federation. It looks absurd, but at the end of the day, those who are benefiting more of this being so close and likely being Olympic for Tokyo 2020 will be our national federation, for the Olympic preparation and for the value that they will receive being an Olympic sport.
And just pick up that point because it's really important. I'll give you an example. Before the build-up to 2012, UK Sport, which funds elite sport in Britain, funded Olympic sports and non-Olympic sports. And orienteering was probably, the British team were about 6th in the world in food orienteering at that time. They then decided that they would put all the money into Olympic sports in the build-up to 2012, and overnight, £500,000 disappeared from the British Orienteering Federation's budget. So it's a classic example. Our own federations suffer because we're not on that Olympic journey.
Yeah, because actually, if you know the Olympic Charter, it is said there is a strange verb that is National Olympic Committee may recognize the recognized sport, may recognize. It's not a matter why they must recognize and have the Olympic sport. It is a little verb that we have not been able to change.
Okay. So, I mean, it would be interesting to understand your point of view also on at which stage, let's say, this whole recognition and also endorsement process from IOC is anyways, because again, coming from the experience from Streamsy basketball, where my impression was that IOC at this stage, obviously also noting that they were undergoing Agenda 2020, meaning understanding it is a transition period anyways. But my feeling was that the target set or the processes set are not very clear right now. And actually we have the same even when it comes to, again, this categorization, okay, which sport is now 1, 2, 3, because arguably you can say, okay, what is the reason why certain, let's say, not so famous sports like archery or modern pentathlon are on the Olympic program, whereas climbing potentially, as we all know, is provenly, I don't know, practiced by millions of people. So this proving, in my opinion, is very difficult these days. And I don't know what's the communication that your federation is having with the IOC, what's the response you get. But my impression is the process right now is really not very clear, not very stable. I don't know if you have a different view on it.
No, we have exactly the same feeling. We just came from a meeting where we asked the IOC, okay, imagine that everything goes well and we become part of the program for 2020, AISTS. And then which status we will have inside the IOC? Are we an Olympic federation, a temporary Olympic federation, an Olympic federation for 4 years, then nobody knows what is going to happen. I think that what has happened in the IOC in the last 2 years is amazing, because they completely changed. They moved from a fully stagnating situation to something that is more close to sport, basically. Sport is being active, moving on and on and on. But this is creating consequences that were not expected, and so I'm sure that this will not slow down the process, but at the moment there is a lot of uncertainty, and it will take some time in order to clarify all the issues that are on the table. And you said it right, also basketball 3-3 is waiting for a place, but nobody knows what will be the future.
Yeah, I think there are more questions than answers. Some parts have not changed. The things you have to do, in theory, haven't changed, in that you have to become more professional at the presentation of your events, particularly in relation to television. You have to become more commercial in terms of the income you bring in and generate. You have to be more global and you have to be growing. It's the days of the old 75, you have to have 75 countries to be considered. That's gone.
That's gone.
But you still have to have a global. These things are still there, and they're still part of the core advice that we receive from the IOC Sports department in terms of the things that we have to do. And that's not bad, because we're trying to do these things anyway. But that doesn't guarantee, having good answers to all of these things doesn't guarantee you get into the games. I mean, because and that's the challenge. There's not an arithmetical process that takes you into the Olympic Games. It's, I have to say, a political process. And it will, no matter how much we think it's, and it is different now, and I welcome the opening up, particularly in terms of host city selections, but it's still a political process.
I think it's quite an interesting time for the Olympic movement as a whole, as well as we look forward into event hosting models, but also the programme itself, because I think every sport has a great opportunity here in a changing environment, and particularly in the area of fan engagement, new technology, etc. There really are great opportunities to showcase your sport in ways that you couldn't do that before, and probably more so in your respective sports than perhaps ours as a traditional field sport. So I think there really is an exciting opportunity to press home that case, using technology like GPS data in your own sport, for example, and various different camera angles, etc. These are all exciting developments which I would say need to be considered moving forward as an important element.
And I think that the challenge today for the IOC is to forget that policy as was one sport in, if one sport goes out. This was not nice, I must tell you, because we participated in the short list, where we lost actually. And imagine that we had to fight against modern pentathlon, where it was twice the target, although then it was wrestling, was not nice. Because you put one sport against the other means athletes, or one sport against the athletes of the other. So the big challenge for the future of the IOC is to find a way, and probably this idea, not considering sport but event, is the right way to proceed. Because, I mean, why should come in at the cost, at the price of another sport? They all deserve respect.
Yeah. But I think from an organizing committee point of view, and also from an IOC point of view, it's the number of athletes that they need to maintain at a certain games. So in order to get one sport in, another sport needs to be sacrificed.
Yes, but we had a very nice consideration yesterday in the ASOIF meeting. The ASOIF is the Association of the Summer Olympic Sport Federation. Because the ASOIF president said, from one side the IOC is saying we stick to the limit of 10,500. On the other side, they open to additional sport 500 athletes more. So, why are not we authorized to ask for more athletes? Because if you can have 500 athletes more because of the additional sport, then you can have also some 100 more athletes for the existing sport in the program. So you see, you open the door there, and then immediately you have a problem on the other side of the table. So it's really complicated.
So I was going to say, and certainly from an event hosting perspective, I can see how complicated that is, because the cost element and the planning element, and if you're going through a bid phase that may have started 6-7 years earlier as well, to have those goalposts shifting is quite difficult. So it's probably more an element of reducing the number of disciplines of a certain sport to accommodate, but certainly from an event hosting perspective, that's a big challenge in terms of additional numbers, because it will limit the amount of bidding cities, for example.
Yeah, and one of the critical things that sports that want to be in the games have to look at now, following Agenda 2020, is actually the cost of their inclusion.
Yeah.
Because if you require another €100 million stadium in order for your sport to be included, then you can forget it. And so the whole argument we're making for both summer orienteering and ski orienteering is we'll just double up with, ski orienteering, we'll just double up with biathlon or cross-country skiing. We don't need the stadium. We just need a bit of ground where we can plough trails enough to give us or in the case of summer sport, because we use urban orienteering, and urban orienteering we can do it anywhere. Olympic Park would be great. Or if you know the London Olympics, Hyde Park, where the old water swimming and the triathlon was, that would work perfectly for us. So we're having to think about how the event hosting aspect impacts on the cost of the Olympic Games as well. That's okay, I think that's very reasonable, and Agenda 2020 actually helps us in that. Thank you very much.
You mentioned that in the end it's a political decision, at the same time it creates opportunities for you. How in your strategic planning do you balance this quest for Olympic inclusion when you can't just rely on it and you still have to develop the sport no matter what the outcome is going to be?
I think I can go back to what I said at the beginning, and that is the journey is worth it anyway, because we're professionalising the sport in terms of how we present our sport, we are commercialising our sport, and we're growing our sport. So we're doing all of these things which we need to do anyway. Even if we don't get into the games, they're all giving us a lasting legacy. The hard part for a sport like orienteering is starting to play the political game. And so that is, we're not meant to be speaking to the 2024 bidding cities at the moment, because it's not the bid teams that will open the door possibly for new sports, it's the organising committee once the bid's selected. But I've been encouraging all our federations in the bidding countries to get to know their National Olympic Committee more closely, and because it's the relationships that are there that actually may take us in that direction. And they need, long before the door is thrown open for the extra sports in 2024, if they do it, they need to know about our sport. So we're becoming more aware of that. And that's a challenge for a sport like orienteering. We're not a very political sport.
And it costs money as well. You know, the lobbying process in terms of the travel, the meetings, actually a campaign, concerted campaign as well. And for a smaller federation, that's a big cost.
Yes,
it's a big risk. It's a big risk, political and financial, because you need to campaign, you need to make presentation, to propose the sport, to present the sport, etc., and in terms of human resources, it's a problem because you are a small federation, you have your calendar, you have your athlete, you have your activity. So you have to move part of your human resources to the Olympic bid, and financially it's clearly a cost. And also it's a political risk, because there are many factors that are out of your reach or out of your control, and then when you lose and you're back to your General Assembly, your federation say, you lost. Say, well, actually there was no chance to win. And we don't care, you lost. Okay. And then if you're lucky, you stay, or that's the door, you have to leave. So this is something that needs to be considered, but from our point of view, I think it's a game that we have to play. You cannot, if you have the opportunity to run for the Olympics, you must run for the Olympics, and there are also advantages. Because I can resume this we made last year, we made a presentation in Tokyo, we made 2 presentations, and then after the presentation we had a press conference. And sport climbing in Japan is quite popular in terms of participation, not popular exposed in terms of media. So we had for the first time probably maybe 50 journalists in front of us, and the first question was why your sport is not well known in Japan. I said, well, this is a question for you, not for us.
That's right.
And the result is that in this weekend we have the World Cup in a suburb of Tokyo, and we have 60 journalists accredited. So you see, and we are not Olympic yet. And maybe we won't be, because actually until we don't see the letter signed by President Bach, we say yes, likely, but we wait. So you see it changes a lot. And last but not least, also under the financial, economical point of view, for the first time we are starting signing significant contract for TV rights. Not significant, but we see some money, not just the peanuts. We see some money.
But I think that's an important point as well, and as Brian said, it's well worth the journey. And I think as a sport that was knocked on the canvas bidding for Olympic inclusion at the Singapore session in 2005, and we were quite comprehensively beaten in that process, we learnt a lot. We were probably too arrogant going into that process and felt we're a big sport with a lot of players carrying a lot of political clout, but actually completely forgot about the important things of sporting participation, certainly around Olympic values, certainly around what the Games can do for you, not just what you can do for the Games. And we learnt a lot from that process and modernised a lot of our structures, focused a lot on gender equality within our competition programmes and player pathways as well. And I think going back to your point about the broadcast contracts as well, we changed our strategy in terms of it's not all about bringing in the money. It's nice to be in that position sometimes to be able to make that decision, but for us, we were selling rights to the same countries for the same big deals, for example, but we weren't balancing that with global growth. In other words, making sure that we were getting our sport on free-to-air platforms wherever possible, but not taking a penny for it. You know, it was balancing that strategy that really helped us get visibility in some of those countries when we came back to the table for the 2009 session. And so having been knocked on the canvas, you learn a lot of lessons as part of the journey, but it's well worth the journey, definitely from a sporting perspective.
And there's one other aspect that's important in our journey, and that is our involvement or our attempt to get involved in other multi-sport games. Orienteering is a very strong military sport, so we're in the World Military Sport Games both winter and summer. But probably more importantly, we have a very, very good relationship with FISU. And Hans-Jürgen and I were in Kazan presenting to FISU board for the last Universiade about ski orienteering. And now we'll be in the Krasnoyarsk Winter Universiade. We had the first ski orienteering university championships in Tula just 2 months ago. And so there's another layer of activity that actually is really important to us, and that's being seen to be in multi-sport games. And I suppose the biggest one for all of us, the three of us sitting here, is World Games. That's really good for our athletes, because they don't get the chance in the way that Olympic sports do of being in multi-sport environments. So you know, sometimes it's quite easy to dismiss World Games, but for us there's no choice but to be there. And it's an important part of that development of a case for our involvement in Olympic Games.
Yeah, unfortunately about the World Games, we have not been able, together with the World Game Association, to promote the World Games the way it deserves.
Yeah.
But if you know Agenda 2020, there is a specific recommendation to work with multi-sport events, especially the World Games. In fact, it would be wise to consider, because you know, there are sports that if you are dropped off from the Olympic Games are dead.
Yeah.
And even if there are a few athletes around the world, these athletes deserve respect. That's what I said in the beginning. So there should be a sort of second division, because today you have the Olympic Games, and then the gap between the Olympic Games and any other, maybe the Asian Games, but the Asian Games are a copy of the Olympic Games on the Asian continent. There should be a place where, for historical or whatever reason, you are not eligible to be in the Olympic Games anymore, you have the right to stay. And maybe the IOC should work, and probably they will, in order to make the World Games bigger in terms of exposure, basically. Yeah. And then if someday one of us or some others will not be able anymore to be in the Games, can stay in the World Game and survive.
Yeah.
You mentioned how it is encouraging for the athletes to actually have something besides the Olympics and the World Games is important. When you think about orienteering or sports climbing, think about nature and athletes. What's the position of athletes actually when it comes to the inclusion of the games? Are they in favor, or for them they want to keep the spirit of those activities that initially were not regulated necessarily?
I should ask a former chairman of our ski orienteering athletes commission to answer that question. Yeah, I'm going to ask you that question actually, because I know what your response will be. So.
Well, yeah, I was actually going to ask this question as well, but yeah, we started off discussing about the impact inclusion in the Olympic Games would have for the sport, and yeah, we talked about the money, we talked about the international federations, the growth globally, and also the impact on the national federations. But especially, I think the athletes, it's really important. There's an economical side for the athletes, easier to get sponsors or funding for the sport, but also the recognition for the athlete to feel that they're doing an Olympic sport, and yeah, how they're being seen in among their friends and society as well, that we are doing an Olympic sport. So that's an important aspect around it. But then, of course, all these three sports, if I'm not wrong, have changed a bit their concept from what is originally orienteering. We're running more in the cities than we used to be in the forest. Rugby 7 instead of 15. And climbing, you're not climbing in the mountains, but on, So this, of course, all the sport has, is at least not the natural way we had it to actually fit into the Olympic program and to reduce the cost of it. That was going to be my question. Back to you, what athletes thought as well. But as an athlete that has tried to work to get in the Olympics, of course, there's a lot of thoughts around this among the athletes, and someone wants to stay to what it is. My experience is the top athletes that are professional, they really support it, and they want to work for it, and they see the benefit. They want to get this recognition. They are training 800 to 1,000 hours a year, and doing the same training amount and work as the best ones, but they probably also have to work on the side or study and these things. Many of them has to end their career earlier than they wanted to, and they really want to work for the sport to become better. While the second best athletes that see that they will never get to this potential, and they will never have this same kind of recognition anyway. They want to stay to what was the basics of the sport.
I think for rugby, and certainly as a sport that has a 15s discipline and a 7s discipline, and previously the 15 stars would have been the big names, and 7s was the emerging growing sport that probably struggled for a little bit of profile, but had equally, if not more talented rugby players and sportsmen and women. I think they're really excited about this opportunity for a couple of reasons. One is that it is a pinnacle for their sport, there's no doubt about that, and the opportunity to be called an Olympian, to get that little tattoo of the Olympic rings, and to mingle in the Olympic village is absolutely important to them. And in fact, when talking to some of our players on the 7s circuit, they're actually really excited about being in the same space as other athletes from other disciplines, which they don't often get the opportunity, well, they've never had the opportunity to do in rugby up until Nanjing 2014. So for them, that's part of the experience as well. There's the high performance piece and being at the top of your sport on sport's greatest stage. Great, fantastic, they're going to love that. But also being in that unique environment, which is bound together through that camaraderie that can only be really achieved through sport, is something they're really excited about. And right at the beginning of our process, in terms of our campaign to have rugby included, we were concerned as to whether some of those 15-a-side players would want to have that, would want to switch from 15s to 7s and have the opportunity of being an Olympian and playing an Olympic sport, particularly because the Rugby World Cup being their pinnacle. What we found is that the two sports have really sort of pushed each other up, or the two disciplines have pushed each other up. So our 15-a-side players are also playing 7. So we have in New Zealand, Sonny Bill Williams, probably the biggest name in our sport at the moment. He has gone in full-time into the 7s programme this year. He wants to be at the Olympics. His sister's playing for the New Zealand women's team as well. They really want it. They want that experience. And what it's done is it's just lifted the game as a whole. So they can't wait to be there and be a part of the village.
So maybe Jérôme has been silver medal in the World Championship, European champion. And he helped a lot in the growth of the organization because he was president of the Athlete Commission. And then when he finished his career, since he needed money, then so Jérôme.
There's not much I can add. This was pretty complete answers, and that covers almost everything. Maybe I would say that when you are an athlete, you have challenges ahead. You have the World Cups, start with the national competition, then the international competition. Eventually, the Olympics will present the biggest challenge in sport. So that's a logic also. And if your federation could offer you the possibility to go to the Olympic Games, well, that's the best challenge that you could have in your sport life. So that's why we also pushing in that direction. Naturally, not even saying money, whatever, or recognition. That comes after. But there's a basic, which is the sport challenge. And also the recognition, I must insist also on that part, because the question when you meet people in the street, okay, what are you doing? Okay, I'm an athlete, in sport, climbing. Yeah, are you in the Olympics? No, not yet.
Yeah.
That represents a lot.
But there was another bit of the question you were asking, and that was about the ethos of the sport. And for, I guess, for all our sports here in different ways, the ethos of our sport is really important, particularly in orienting our involvement with the environment. But also, you know, I said we're not a particularly political sport. We are. We don't have political divisions within our world structure to any great extent yet. But protecting the ethos of our sport in terms of anti-doping and everything else as we go down that road towards Olympic Games is really important to us. And I guess the sport of orienteering, if it thought it was going to lose some of its core ethos, would say no. The Olympic ideals, we buy into all of that. But actually, what comes with that is a negative side. And the spirit of my sport, orienteering, wants to protect these things. Because it's these things that actually make young people want to come. We're an all-age sport. The youngest kids that go orienteering are under 5. In our Masters Championships now, we have a 95-plus class. And if we're going to maintain that whole family image of our sport alongside the elite image, we've got to protect the ethos. So there are some things that are immovable for me in the journey. And they actually are consistent with what the IOC wants to do, but we all know that sitting alongside that is the dark side. And for me, that's something we need to watch.
Yeah, actually, this dark side, of course, is something that the athletes feel. But also in the discussion that we talked, in the talks we have the IOC, they always say, not always, often now they start saying, we are living a fantastic atmosphere, there is really friendship, but the day you are Olympics or much more money will come, then things will change. And our answer is, it's not written anywhere that it should change. I challenge you, IOC, and everybody to keep the atmosphere, the good atmosphere, and rather than things we are going to change, say, okay, we must preserve this. Then, of course, there are voices who are against, but this is life, and it's good to have sometimes voices against because it gives you the opportunity to think about the best way to proceed with the sport. A typical behavior of some climber, some athlete today is anyway, I don't care because I will be too old for the Olympics. And now time is shorter, so actually the decision is taken just 4 years before the event. So, but then if you say, look, but then because of the Olympic preparation, maybe you will be too old for competing, but you can be a coach, and be part of the system that will manage the sport that you love. And then you say, okay, maybe I could be a coach or a manager or a leader, a politician, someone, and then they realize. You have to talk with the athletes. And they are young and they pretend everything now, or actually yesterday. It's logical. You need the difficulty is to try to speak the same language. Then if you talk to them and make them understand that it's in the benefit of them first, whatever role they cover, then they will follow us.
I think what we found was interesting is, again from bid phase to where we are now, apologies is that some of our top players when we were bidding were a little bit sceptical. They saw sevens as being the sort of the fun discipline of 15s, and they couldn't really see the attraction or how it might work. And as we've got closer and closer towards the games, what we found is that they now want to be a part of it. The problem is they've run out of time. Actually to be a very good sevens player, it takes a lot of time and work. You need at least a year on the series, working to those high levels of fitness, aerobic capacity, etc. Different technicality, different physicality as well. But interestingly as well, during that period of time, the sevens players have gone from here to here as well. So 15s players who think they can go in and just walk into a team because they are the biggest name in their sport, it's not going to happen. They're just not good enough. And while they bring with them a certain cachet around the name, which is great for the fans and great for the Olympics, the reality is, as a new sport, it's going to be the Rio 2016 games that will launch our new stars. You know, it's going to be the likes of Carlin Isles, who is, you know, a sub 100 metre sprinter playing for the USA, who will become a star. He's got great personality, or Perry Baker or whoever, Portia Woodman. You know, these athletes. Rio will launch them, and they will become stars off the back of it for many reasons, not just because of their feats on the field. Their personality will come out through social media as well. So for us, there's a huge, you know, a huge benefit there.
Yeah, and of course people are scared, and the athletes are very conservative. They want to keep the world as it is. So even imagine, I mean, you have been really brave to propose this change. But I remember when I was playing volleyball, I was younger, but then I had to stop because I was too short. But if someone had come to us and say, and would have described the volleyball they are playing today, I would have said, impossible. And now we have a fantastic sport, so it is really amazing, exciting, and so on, but it's not the volleyball that I was playing 30 years ago, or more, 35.
Yeah, I had to give up rugby at an early age because I simply had no talent whatsoever. But then, when I was at school, I was given a book about orienteering and told I should do this. But for me, the interesting thing in our sport and orienteering here in Switzerland, orienteers are sporting personalities. Many of you will know of Simona Nigli, who is the most successful woman orienteer, one of the most successful sporting people in the world from Switzerland, known here, but not known outside Switzerland. You know, when the World Championships was here in 2012 in Lausanne, when you were on the M2 metro line, and on the buses, you saw pictures of Simona looking at it. And well, yesterday, Matthias Kaburtz, who's a multi-gold medal winner who won the sprint men's race here in 2012, got on the train at 4 o'clock in the morning to come here to support our morning orienteering yesterday. I hope that continues when we're in the Olympic Games, but we're probably going to have to pay Matthias to do that at that stage. But you know, for us, the recognition beyond the countries where we're strong, like Switzerland, like Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Denmark now, it's getting recognition for the athletes beyond these places, which they deserve. In our sport, we have some of the fittest aerobic athletes in the world, and they deserve recognition for that, if nothing else, because the amount of work that goes into doing that is huge.
I wanted to add, to come back to the, I think recent Olympic history also showed us the worst case what's actually happening when the athlete is not included. I think the worst case was FIS with snowboarding back in the 90s. It actually led to a split of the federation even. And even today, if you would ask the professional BMX bikers, they would rather have sponsorship deal with Red Bull than becoming an Olympic champion. So I think it's always also a matter of what's the alternative.
Yeah.
Same thing also that I would guess that most tennis players would still prefer a Grand Slam title over an Olympic medal. So it's always in the sports world, I believe, first a matter of the DNA of the sport. Really, does it actually fit into the Olympic program, or are we actually maybe better off with X Games as an example, with snowboarding? This discussion amongst the athletes you still have today. If it's now better or cooler to have an Olympic medal or to be the champion of the X Games, that's the one, and then the other one really. The alternative. What is the alternative of being an Olympic champion? Could it be about a sponsorship deal? Could it be again winning any type of other event that is not Olympic, but for the reputation for me of an athlete, maybe more interesting. So this is really, I think it's really from sport to sport, a very particular answer.
It's a really good question and a comment, because in my day job as a sports consultant, I did part of a review of the International Cricket Council. And part of that was interviewing India, and India didn't want to go near the Olympic Games because the value of the sport, they would have to sacrifice some of the cash value that they have in the sport from existing sport. It's huge, it's massive in a sport like cricket. And I think that's right. I think there's an evaluation which sports make. I rather suspect that cricket will want to get into games. They've got this new discipline of 2020, which is ideal for Olympic Games. But they're still going to have to persuade India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, who are some of the core stakeholders, that that's the journey they want to go on. They haven't won that argument yet.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was a bit, about, I talked a bit, sports have a bit changed to, at least fit Olympic program. I'm not sure exactly how much, rugby 7, how much it was before, and also sport climbing, if you, but at least for orienteering, we have changed it now from being out in the forest to more urban. And you can, like, all of the 3 sports are quite old. Maybe not the federation, but at least the sport climbing is old, rugby is old, and orienteering is old. And it's been dominated by some countries that they have done this for a long time. They are still dominating the sport and doing these changes and making them maybe more accessible to more people, that more countries actually now can fight for the top. We see it in orienteering, and I guess also the other sports see the same thing, that this opens the sport in a new way and make it more accessible to more people.
From our perspective, Olympic Games inclusion has been a game changer already. We're not even at our first Olympic Games, and there's absolutely no doubt, I wouldn't use that phrase lightly, it has been incredible and profound in terms of the impact. And I think, aside from having greater recognition, it's enabled us to double our participation since 2009. So we're now about 7.7 million registered players worldwide, which is incredible. At the beginning of that process, less than 10% of the playing population was female. We're now just under 40, which is incredible. So it's the fastest growing form of the game. And in addition to that as well, it's really sort of unlocked additional support through the school systems. You have to, in many countries, unless you're an Olympic sport, you can't get into school curriculums, you well know. And for us, it's enabled us to do that from that early age of the non-contact form of rugby, so you can play the mixed tag or touch, mass participation. It's also unlocked some really interesting funding opportunities for our national federations who, bearing in mind, and going to your point in terms of having limited, I suppose, competition at the very top end, we would have been the major finance or funder sponsor of a lot of our national federations outside of the top 10, top 20 in the world. The money that they receive from us would fund them over a 4-year cycle, but actually now they have major partnerships with their NOCs, governments, etc., and that's helping them establish their sevens programs, but also that's accelerating their 15s programs in tandem as well, which is really helpful. And I think to demonstrate this in a case study way, a couple of weeks ago, 2 things happened which demonstrated the Olympic effect. One is we signed a deal with Alibaba or Ali Sports in China, a massive deal in terms of the development of the sport in China. That would not have happened if we had not been an Olympic sport. They would not have been interested in investing in us. And secondly, going back to the competition piece, because NOCs have become very interested in sevens as an opportunity for a medal, particularly in the women's side, we've now got really, really competitive men's and women's seven series. Last week, Kenya won our Singapore sevens. It's the first time they've won on the series. We've got Brazil's women in the top 5 in the world as well, and going very well. I won't talk so much about Russia potentially, but their women are in the top 3 in the world as well. Canada and USA, medal opportunities in both men's and women's too. And when you think traditionally of rugby in its 15-a-side format, you'd be thinking, England, Scotland, Wales, New Zealand, Australia. Well, New Zealand are no longer the winning team on the 7 series in women's and men's, which is pretty incredible. They dominated it for over a decade. So it's been profound.
You've been really emphasizing all the benefits of being included in the program or even the prospect. And do you think, on the other hand, that you can actually be an actor of change of the Olympic program and have yourself an impact on it when we see that federations like FIVB that's been there for years are struggling to board with three? What's your view on that?
I think as a new sport onto the program, we found it a really interesting and rewarding journey, because quite often you're operating sort of siloed in your own sport, and you're doing everything for your sport, and you're not necessarily collaborating or sharing information in important areas. I mean, probably athlete welfare being the most important area, but for any sport, and particularly in our sport, we're feeling the debate around concussion, for example. I could talk for an hour about that, so I won't bore you, but anyway. So for us, actually having the role in terms of contributing to medical commissions, training and education programs, for example, has been really, really beneficial. And I think from the Olympic Games as well, having additional support, additional expertise in working groups has been beneficial for the IOC as well. But also I think it just brings, every new sport that enters the program brings something new and fresh and exciting. And I think for us, Going back to Brian's point, we didn't need a purpose-built stadium. We're sharing a modern pentathlon at Rio 2016. It's exciting. It's made for broadcast. It's socially engaging, and the opportunity for more nations to win a medal. Fiji have never won an Olympic medal, by the way. So we could have Fiji winning their first ever Olympic medal on day 3 of the games with the women's sevens. So that would be a great story in itself. So you bring all these little narratives and stories as well, but also away from the sporting side, you're collaborating with other sports to drive sport forward, whether that be governance, whether that be protective around your regulations in a European Union context, for example, player welfare, etc. It's really important being inside.
In some ways, I think that new sports will always bring something to Olympic movement. It's interesting that if you read the Sports Business magazine, there's a question asked about do we get enough support from the IOC for this journey? And I said yes, because the kind of support, I believe that sports need to get themselves to a position where they can get into the Olympic Games. It's not for us to keep asking the IOC to help us get to that point. Because if we ask that question, we're not going to do it. But we are going to bring something different. We'll all bring something different. If orienteering gets into the Winter or Summer Games, we'll bring revolution. The reason we bring the revolution is we'll do that unique thing. We'll have a men's and women's team. We have a mixed relay in ski orienteering or in food orienteering. Now, I don't think there's another mixed activity in the Olympics. Triathlon, yeah, and tennis, yeah, I suppose, yeah, okay. Okay, so but there we go. But the other thing is also, in our case, we are a mass participation sport of all ages, with the elite bit in the Olympic Games acting as a catalyst to drive forward the rest of the sport. Is an exciting prospect too. But we would be using it that way around to grow the global footprint of our sport too. But there is an issue about us. We need to get there to be worthy of inclusion, not be expecting the Olympic Games to enable us to be worthy of inclusion. It's not that way.
Yeah, well, actually we had this great experience in Nanjing where was a cluster, a youth cluster called the Sport Lab was created, and there was sport there, and it was exhibition. And the only difference with the Olympics is that we didn't have a real competition with medals. But the concept today is try to do it with the medals. So if the project succeeds in Tokyo, we will see something completely different, where people really take part. And imagine a cluster where actually we have basket 3-3, we have climbing, we have skateboarding, we have 4 or 5 of these considered young sports, and people can participate. So you have the competition for the medals, but in the other days, you have people training there, the athletes training there, and in the morning, for example, you have common people going there, the kids initiation. This is a completely different concept. And in fact, this is the real revolution, because it would completely change the face of the games. People will participate, and the experience in Nanjing was crazy. For rollers, for us, for wushu was a little more complicated, but you have a very long line, never-ending lines. People, kids basically, waiting their moment to climb or to go with rollers and so on. And this is the new concept that, if the session agrees, will be brought into the Olympics. And also in this case, we always criticize the IOC, but well, you must be you have some courage to propose such a big change.
I'm actually just curious, what your advice would be for other federations who have not thought about going on this journey that you guys have gone on. What would the strategy be? Would it be focus on growing your game, like you said, getting to the point where then we can think about inclusion, or use the criteria to be included and use that to be able to get into the Olympics? Maybe if you grow your game, you could guarantee that the essence of your sport remains, and also the criteria might change later on by the time you get to the point where you are considered to be included.
For me, it's not an either or, because you have to do the criteria are important for growing your own sport. So that the criteria that are set down about what I said, professionalization, commercialization, globalization, you should be doing that in your own sport anyway if you have ambitions to grow your sport. So these things make sense. It's not an either or. You don't have to make a choice about that. It's my point about, I believe that sports that want to be in the Olympic Games need to be at a level to be justify their case to be in there. But that actually makes sense in terms of growing your sport as well, because so the television product's better, so the economy of the sport is better, you've got more sponsorship deals. Okay, as we've heard, it becomes easier if you look as if you're getting close, because suddenly people start to recognize you, okay. But it doesn't mean to say you shouldn't be doing that already. So that's why I was meaning right at the outset, I said the journey's worth it. And I've said that to General Assemblies of my sport. I will no doubt say it again this summer. The journey's worth it because it actually does things that actually improve the sport for everyone that's involved in it, or it should do.
Yeah, actually, I think that first of all each and every federation need to concentrate on themselves. There are two principles today that are really strong, are really considered by the IOC. One is the governance, or what they say, good governance, but governance should be good, otherwise it's not governance, but anyway. And the clean athletes. Really focus on those two principles. If you are not good in that, if you are not compliant, to use another common word, then forget it. Then work on use the resource that the federation have. Believe me, we are not a rich federation. We have almost the same annual budget. It is not big. We are talking about little money compared to many other sports. But use your resources and show the potentiality of the sport. Because the problem is, you could never compare with an Olympic sport. Never. Because they have the TV rights, and the money they use is to promote themselves. So they can buy TV space, and we cannot do the same. So just focus on your sport and the potentiality of your sport. If you value the potentiality of the sport, I think the IOC today is able to listen to you.
We have a very concrete live example at the moment, and that's on the 11th of May, we're having the first ever World Orienteering Day. And it's a very simple, low-cost concept, relatively low-cost concept. Low-cost concept. We're inviting clubs and schools throughout the world to register to have an event on that day. So far, we have over 60 countries, and at the last count, I think 882 locations that are going to be doing orienteering on that day. Now, we will be going to our annual meeting with the IOC tomorrow morning, and we'll be sharing that with them. Because here, and what has happened in that initiative, we've got a relationship with clubs and schools that we've never had before as an international federation. And we're getting registered locations in places where there is no orienteering federation. Algeria, Malawi, and in other places. And suddenly, we're actually seeing a sort of people's movement growing our sport, and I'm particularly excited about that. But it's using our resources. You're right. The total budget of the IOF is less than the president's office budget of one major international sports federation. So we have to find creative, imaginative ways of doing all these things.
There's a lot of work to do. When we were preparing the Olympic bid dossier, we discovered that there are climbing infrastructure in at least 140 countries, and we have 88 national federations. So you see, there are 50 countries where they go climbing indoor or on infrastructures, but they are not members. So they have athletes, they have climbers, but they don't participate in our lives.
I think answering your question strategically from our sports perspective, it was about having everybody pulling in the right direction. Really believing you're doing it for the right reasons, it's in the heart. And I think the difficulty sometimes with bids is that you'll get a bit of a potential fracture within your sport in terms of opposing views as to whether Olympic inclusion is good, you should be focusing on it, you can have other priorities, other mouths to feed, etc. Whereas I think for us with our 2009 campaign, the whole sport was unified behind it. There was no dissenting whatsoever. Everyone could see, believe and understand the benefits. And that was key. It was also enshrined within our strategic plan. So our 2009 to 2020 strategic plan, our number one priority, was Olympic inclusion. And that strategic plan came, excuse me, a little bit dry, came from the membership. And very much they were consulted to all of our 120 national federations through the General Assembly. And you absolutely have to have their support and their mandate to go through with it. And if you have their backing, you're more likely to run a good campaign.
Sorry, yeah.
Oh, thank you. But pretty much was about resources, so on this regards, I think we already addressed. My other question was about the journey and let's say throughout this Olympic journey, you have come up with something that really changed your identity, some major transformation because of the criteria, because of the growing the game, something that you really major shift. Just wanted to know about that.
The answer for orienteering, both in ski orienteering and in traditional orienteering, is bringing the sport into cities. It's a big change for us because our traditional base is for a sport, and the long distance races, everybody likes a winning time of 90 minutes and timed intervals, and it goes on for 5 hours, and so it doesn't work in the Olympic Games. But bringing the sport into a city makes the sport more visible, and you don't lose the traditional bits, you still do them in the right context. So that's one example, and we had to do that so that we could have a television product that worked. The other thing in orienteering that has made us a television product is GPS satellite tracking, because Dominic, you can watch your sport because it all happens there in the pitch, and Mark, you do it in a wonderful wall, and it's really exciting. Orienteering, traditionally, you head off into the forest, and 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 90 minutes later, you come back, and nobody knows what's going on. So we have had to be able to tell the orienteering story. It's a really difficult challenge and different challenge for us. And now we can do that because you can see the satellite track, you can see people making mistakes. You can see people choosing different route choices, and there being a 60-meter difference in length. So you've suddenly, in a sprint race, a 15-minute winning time, you've suddenly won the race because you've taken the best route choice, the better route choice. And so we've had to change our sport very dramatically over the last 10 years, Tom?
Yeah,
yeah, 10 to 15 years. But it's not just to get in the Olympic Games. Somebody said to me about ski orienteering. Of course, you've got that new discipline of ski orienteering just so you can get into the Winter Olympic Games. Well, that's nonsense. Actually, we've had ski orienteering since the late 1900s. Because like ordinary orienteering groups started in Scandinavia, people orienteered on skis very naturally from the outset. But we are very much changing the technology of our sport and everything else to make sure it works in that setting. But it's not bad for us doing that.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm coming back to the question you had about what do the sports bring to the Olympics. And something IOC is pushing a lot now is, of course, we want to get the youth activated, or we want to get them engaged, but we also want to get them activated in doing more sports. To make them healthy and these things. And at least, what orienteering and climbing do is, we bring a legacy with us. If we get in there, we make people, first of all, getting a better understanding of how to navigate, but also, we inspire them to hopefully do this sport and doing this kind of, natural skills that, to do navigation, finding your way, do climbing. These are natural skills for a human. But today, the kids, they are sitting still, watching their TVs and computers. But if we can inspire them to go out and do these natural things, maybe even life-saving skills, that's a legacy that we bring to the games. Is that something you can get recognition from the IOC, that they understand that this can be something?
I think so. Well, there is the case of Tokyo 2020 is peculiar. Actually, what the IOC, what the IOC is proposing, what Tokyo proposed to the IOC and the IOC now is proposing to the membership is a packet of 5 sports. If you go through the 5 sports, you see that you have the national sport in Japan, baseball and softball, which is quite logical. You have karate that was born in Japan and tried so many times to get into the game, this state. And then you have 3 what I consider young sports. Okay. One is surfing, one is us, and one is skateboard. If the packet goes through, it's really a success because it respects tradition, history, and also economical interest in Japan, which is the hosting country. On the other side, he really stick to the principle or to the plan of rejuvenate the game with three young sports. So it's a little different from what you're saying. It's a special case. But then this will be just the beginning of the story because, as you said, what is happening afterwards, nobody knows. It will be more difficult after this experience than before because also the other sports will try to defend themselves. Yeah. Because we always talk about modern pentathlon, but modern pentathlon is 100 athletes. There are other sports that have more than 1,000. So it will be very difficult for the IOC to find a balance between all these streams that are coming from different directions. But for sure something has to be done because otherwise, TV audience, TV audience for the Olympics is getting older and older. Yeah. They need the young people.
All right. Conclude with the very last one. No? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.